Hello everyone, good morning. So my name is Mohammed Misat and I'll be your lecturer today.
Good morning, sir.
Let's get started with the class. Okay, so we will be learning about the basics of photography today. It will be a short and quick class. So what are we going to learn in this class? We're going to learn about the basics of photography. What is the exposure triangle? Understanding aperture, understanding the ISOs, as well as understanding shutter speeds. If you have any doubts, you can always text or ask in the call, and I'll try my best to help you out. So, what is photography? Before you think about the explanation that I gave, does anyone have any idea? Anyone? Class, let's try to make this class as interactive as possible as well. So anyone knows what's photography?
Refers to the art of capturing image.
Okay. And no Google searches, by the way. Anything else?
Capturing pictures.
Okay. Capturing pictures. What else? Okay, I suppose that's all the answers. So you're correct. Art of capturing images, it's all good, and that's correct in a way. But the literal definition of photography refers to light drawing. So most people don't associate photography to drawing with light, but they should, because that is what photography is. And you'll learn more about it when we get started on this chapter. As photographers, our biggest challenge is light, and there is so much to know about light, the quality of light, the color of light, and the direction of light, and more impacts of light causes more amazing photos. What do you see in this image? Anyone? Hello? Come on, it's just a simple image. Something in chat as well. Memories. Anyone knows what this is? Or what do you feel when I showed you this photo first? Okay, black and white, yeah, obviously. Next.
They are forcing the cement only for the photography.
Okay. Black and white structure. Okay. So can you call this as a piece of portrait which is from the past? Yeah, Harosh is quite correct. Can you describe it as it's a past monument which is captured in a way to look more old than it is? You all agree with me? If you don't want to speak, you can always use the chat, as I'm also reading the chat. Okay. So our human brains processes visual amazing, like visual images 60,000 times faster than written information through photography. So what that basically means is that once you see an image, you capture more details from it rather than by hearting each and every sentence. So if I say you that this person was this, and give you a type of a story, you wouldn't be able to visualize it more precisely. But once you have a proper visualization of what the actual thing is, you might be able to understand half of the story in a quicker pace compared to reading through a whole paragraph. And yeah, Harosh is again correct of some side. Yeah, he is correct because it's a type of storytelling and a visual memory. Through photography, what we do most of the time is we preserve history. We take the moments that mean a lot to us and we capture it and we keep it for future reference. For example, our children walking and taking their first steps. A baby taking the first step is something very important, and we do that. There's also endangered animals such as tigers and then also dodos. So, endangered animals, decaying buildings. Decaying buildings, it may be from the past. For example, due to an event in that actual place which caused the buildings to fall down. Yeah, Harosh, you have someone has their hands up. Anyone? Someone has their hands up. Can you say what's your doubt? Okay, okay, no issues. So, and as I was saying, it can be of buildings decaying, and it can also be the times of war and times of passion. Uh, the famous photographies and the images definitely give an impact for the whole. Okay, that can also be true. So yeah, the famous images definitely gives you a feel for the impact of photography and how capturing this slice of life is a storytelling. Can you guys not hear me?
Yeah, sir, your voice is little bit low for us.
Is it? Just give me a moment. Hello. Is it better now?
Yeah, sir, now it is better.
Okay. So it gives us a sense of what's past end of the history. So by looking at the photo, you can always see what actually has happened by looking into it and just thinking of it. So I have had this image on the desktop. So tell me, what do you think this is by looking at it? What type of forest this is? What type of mood are you in when you're seeing this? You just put in the chat on what the answer is, and I'll read it out. And please don't feel shy to just say the wrong answer. It's fine. Okay, it's raining, it's snowy. Okay. So, anyone else? What do you think this is? So, by looking at this image, what I would say is uh, when I went to a trip the other day, so it was around Candy area as well, and there's a first like this, by the way. So, all of this contributes to a cold place, as someone said in the chat, and it gives an incredible moment at that particular time. And what we do right now is just think of the old moments and feel about it. So am I not right? You can feel that actual moment that you were in with a photograph, a single photograph. You can make yourself make like feel the past. Correct? Wrong? Am I? Okay. Yeah, you're all correct. Yeah, you all understand emotions with the photographs. So everything that you capture is not in the present, it's always in the past. And by using photos, you remember what happened in the past. Anyone has any doubts so far? Anyone has any doubts? Or shall I continue? Okay. So the next thing is exposure triangle. This is one of the most important things in photography that you will be learning. So every camera, regardless of what model you have, you might see these three options. So one is aperture, the other one is ISO, and the other one is shutter speed. To get a proper photo, you'll have to mix and match all these three components to get the best photo. This is just a visual representation of what each thing does. As you can see, ISO, there's more noise and less noise, which is more light or even less light. And then there is aperture, which is light volume, and the other one is light length. So now it makes sense why I said photography is the art of drawing lights, does it? Come on, just be interactive in the chat at least. So now does anyone understand why I called photography as drawing of light in the beginning of the slides? So there's no reply. Yeah, continuing. So this is basically the visual representation of the relationship between the ISO, aperture, and the shutter speed. These are the main three components of exposure. We will discuss about this in detail, and we'll understand how these three are going to work together. So when you think of your camera, what do you think of it as? just a camera or something else. And let me give you a hint. Try thinking of your camera as something that can observe light drawings, and you will understand what I'm coming to. Am I on mute? Okay, no response. Okay. So think of your camera as a dark box. These three are the components that will let you capture images, basically. So the way camera sees things is with aperture, ISO, and shutter speed. And these three are the most important ones so far that we have learned. And we'll be understanding one at a time. As you can see, even though I'm giving percentages over here, it is always not this way. At times you will need more ISO compared to shutter speed, and at times you will need more aperture compared to ISO. So it can go three ways. It's just a pie chart, but you can relate these three components into a pie chart. When you take more light from one, it takes more, it takes away from another. So if you make more ISO, it can take more aperture or it can take more shutter speed. Uh, so understanding these components will allow you to understand what the total exposure of each component is and how they let their light in and how these effects of light changes. So your images will look different in each category basically. I'm sorry, but okay. So now we'll be going to the aperture. It's also one of the three pillars of exposure triangle. I think you have read this from the last chapter where I showed you the exposure triangle. This is also referred to as the f-stop. It's actually the function of the lens and not the camera itself, but the controls are managed by the camera. uh, so aperture is basically works like a human eyes, by the way. So when you are in a bright environment, your eyes, the pupils, that's the black dots on your eyes, they decrease in size or increase in size depending on how much light there is. So if there is more light, it decreases. If there is less light, it increases in order to adapt and show more of light. That's how your eyes work. So as you can see, f1.4 aperture. So we use apertures in f modes as I mentioned in the previous slide. So the thing is, most of the times we as photographers don't see this aperture. We just guess which is the best one and we try to shoot. So, but at the same time, we know what kind of field of view we want because there are always two field of views that we can expect from a photograph from a DSLR. So one is a shallow depth of field and the other one is deep. So deep basically keeps everything in focus, the background that is, and the shallow literally just blurs it out and only keeping the subject that's closer in focus. So the visual on the left was taken at aperture f16, and the one on the right was taken with f2.8. I think that gives a pretty understanding of what the different apertures does. So the shallow depth of field was caused by 2.8 aperture, and the deep background was caused by f16. As you can see, as the f-stop decreases, there is more light which is also decreased on the way. So the ideal conditions for f1.4 would be at night, right? But at the same time, f1.4 will make your background pop even more compared to what I showed you in the previous slide. It will make this dog pop even more. And f16 basically is good for almost, I would say, the sunniest of situations because it allows less light in. Anyone has any doubts? Okay, if there's any doubts, just let me know on this. If you have any doubts on this topic particularly, just let me know so I can explain it and I'll get moving to the next one. It's always easier to focus on when you have the doubts. If you have any doubts, please ask. Okay, so moving on. How does aperture affect light? Large aperture openings actually give us more light, as I told you, at 1.4. And the smaller aperture openings give you less light. Example, f16. Now the aperture numbers seem a little backwards. As you can see, 1.4, how is 1.4 bigger than 1.6? But the smaller aperture number like f1.4 is the furthest aperture opening, so it's on the left here. The large aperture opening, like the larger number, f16, is all the way in the right. And we always increase apertures one step at a time just to know which one is better. And so I'll give you a scenario. You're supposed to take a portrait of someone. Which aperture mode would you think is best for taking the photo? Just put in the chat and I'll read it back to you.
Sir, can you repeat the question again?
Okay, so you're supposed to take a picture of someone, okay, in a portrait setting. So basically you want the background to be blurry, but not too blurry. You need the subject as well as the background. So what would be your choice? Okay. 4.2. Okay. Anything else? Yeah, I'm talking about aperture. So basically, to give you more a conclusion of what this is. So this allows more light to come into your lens and take more shallower photos in which the background is totally blurred and the uh, subject, that is your let's say a person, is in focus. The more you go backwards until the f16 pot, when you go to f16, you're basically taking both of them together and you'll have a deep one instead of having a shallow. You'll have almost everything in the background in focus. So yeah, which do you think is the best option for taking a photo only with aperture? Without, let's not think about the ISO or the other one for now, only with the aperture. So if the person actually wants the background to be slightly blurry, he would go with something like f8. And if you want something that he has to pop out more, we'll go with something like f2.8. I hope that's understood.
Yeah, sir.
Okay. If you have any doubts, please let me know before I move on to the next chapter. I can assume that the silence means no doubts, right? Okay, I'll give you all a small work to do. I want you all to check, uh, if you have a camera, to check your camera and see which is the lowest aperture that you have. Okay, in your camera, and let me know. For example, uh, my camera basically has an aperture of uh, I think it's f1.5. Yeah, it has an aperture of 1.5. So what does that mean to my camera? What does that actually mean in the sense, what types of photo will I be able to take with an aperture of 1.4 or 1.5? Am I not audible? Hello? Focus, yes, okay. And my lens is also having an aperture of, so that's the shallowest, and the most deepest is 5.6. So what type of photo am I expected to take at 5.6 compared to the other lenses? Okay, I can focus on the subject clearly. Yes, good. Shallow field. Yes, good. I know you are just looking at the picture and stating that, but it's fine. You're at least learning something. So with f5.6 aperture, what type of photo can I expect? Yeah, so if you really don't know what to expect, just look at the chart, the light chart on below the actual photo itself. You can see that there is more light here and less light on the right hand side, which means that when you transition from a shallow to a deep, there will always be black and white. So when you want to differentiate which type of photo you will take, you can just look at the color of the darkness and you'll figure out which type of photo you can expect at f5.6. Understood? So, and Ali is correct. You can expect a deep image with a focused subject as well as a focused background. So I'll take one more chapter now, and then we might take our leave. So what is ISO? So this is the second part of the exposure triangle that we're talking about. It's basically on, okay, so shall I get started? Do you have any doubts already? It's basically equivalent to what film speed was. If you've ever taken a photo and then try to see how sensitive your camera lens is to the light, you will be able to, okay, frame rate, that's a good answer. So anyone took a photo and checked on what is the latest ISO they used to get the photo, even with an automatic, or like if you even with your mobile phone? Not the resolution, I'm asking. So take a photo that's in your phone, and when you check for the details of the particular photo, you'll be able to get what ISO it was captured in, what shutter speed, and what f-stop. Can you just check it real quick for me and let me know in the chat? Just do me a quick favor and let me know on that. So anyone? For example, I took a picture of something that was there in my room. Uh, it had an aperture of f1.6 and an ISO of 640. So what about you guys? ISO 100, what was the aperture? And what type of photo was it, Bilal? Was there more light, less light? Was it a bright photo, a darker photo? Just mention it in your words. Was it a ISO 100? So it refers to, okay, so it was a lighter photo. Yeah. So it's basically the equivalent to film speed, and it shows how sensitive the camera light is to the light, the sensor. So as you can see, it's a bit blurry. I'm sorry about that. I couldn't find a better image. So as you can see, these are the different f-stop ISOs that we have. And you can see how it affects the lens as well, taking the photo. And you can see, as you can see, like there's more light over here, which is more light is allowed at ISO 100, and less light is allowed or produced in ISO 12800. So most of the cameras nowadays starts with ISO 100 and goes all the way to 12,800, and there are even cameras with 64,000 or something like that. I'm not sure. So there's camera with 32,000 as well. So the camera nowadays have a lot more ISOs, professional ones at least. But most of the cameras we have ISO ranging from 100 to 12,800. Moving on. So this actually shows the what how your ISO works. And now you might be conflicted. Bilal said he took a photo with ISO 100, but it was a lightish this thing. But now sir is sharing his screen and saying that raising the ISO allows more light. Anyone has an explanation for this? Anyone has any idea why this can be? Just put it in the chat and I'll read them. So anyone, why do you think one of our friends photo which was taken in ISO 100 having more light, and the photo that's shown in this is having the darkest, it's one of the darkest, whereas 1600 is having more light. And I'll give you a hint, we already actually went through it. We actually just, I showed you this in the second slide, I remember. Anyone? You have like 30 seconds to reply. Just any reason. It doesn't have to be correct. High sensitivity and brightness. Yeah, again, I'm giving you a hint. I've already told you about this. This contributes to the major factor. It's one of the most important things in photography. So take a wild guess. It's easy. It consists of three things. I'm literally just telling you all everything except the answer itself. It's due to the exposure triangle. So as I told you, exposure triangle works with three different to make a photo look better. So with DSLRs and professional cameras, what you can do is you can basically just lock your aperture and your shutter speed to one certain speed, and then change the ISO and check for yourself. Yeah. So the answer of this question of why two images taken on the same ISO is different is because of the other factors which are playing with the shutter speed and the aperture. So the ISO basically shows differences. So as you can see, when you raise the ISO, you get a little more light in 200. When you raise another by other 200, you will get a 400, which will have more light. When you double it, you will get even more. and 1600, you'll get even more. So this is basically how you want to use your ISO most of the times. So this is the basic of which ISO you have to use for every scenario. So 100 ISO is mostly used for daylight, 200 for shady areas, 400 for indoors, 800 for dawn or even at dusk, that is evening, and 1600 is for nighttime photography. So it doesn't have to be spots particularly, it can be for normal photos as well. Next up, so one of the things that you'll struggle with when you're taking photos with higher ISO is that you will get a lot of grains. I think you have seen this in pictures when you zoom in or when you take photos at night. Has anyone come across some black color or let's say some how do I describe this, kind of a white noise-ish thing on your image? Anyone? If yes, just raise your hand. Just take a photo of the things that you've taken in the past and check if you can find anything that has grain. So most of the times it will be at night. So indoors or night time photos, you'll have something like this. Okay, so no reply. Okay, so basically once you increase your ISO in, let's say this is in an indoor condition, from 100 to 200 to 400 to 800, 1600 to 3200, and then 6400. So when you reach a difference, you can see that the sweet spot on this photo is basically this is 100, 200, 400, this is 800. So 800 is the sweet spot before developing a grain, which makes the image looks unprofessional and not ready to use. So if you're taking a photo or if you're setting up your camera for any event, what I usually do is I go inside the actual event center and take pictures and check which is the best settings of ISO, because ISO, once you get these grains, even though you can clear some of them in Photoshop and Lightroom, you will still be able to see this, and it's not something presentable. Anyone has any doubts? Yes, Ishani. So if anyone is having doubts, just let me know, because this will probably be the last slides. So best recommendations for taking a photo: check out your environment and try to take the photos with a lesser ISO in order to get a good photo, or else you will be ending up with gains, which is not something really pleasing to look at. Yeah, so you see, the thing is, every ISO is different on different what would I say, environment. So it works differently, even though it says that the ideal, as I mentioned over here, the ideal guide is this. This might not be always true. You can see that there will be different ISOs that works, like for example, different lenses have different shutter speeds, as I mentioned before, the f-stops. So these f-stops, that is the apertures, along with the ISO, helps in getting a better photo. And these two have to work with one more thing, that is shutter speed. Shutter speed basically describes the speed of your camera closing in to take the picture. I'll be teaching you all that for next week. For now, this is more than enough. So all three of them to combine uh, takes a photo, and now you can say the best ISO is 800. I would suggest you take a picture of something else in a different lighting environment, and you'll see that the ISO is differed. Lucy, can you just check and let me know on that if I'm correct or wrong? So try taking a darker photo or even a lighter photo. So as I mentioned, different environments need different ISOs, and it won't be always the same for all the environment. You'll have to change basically depending on how you want it. So that's why most of the photographers, what they do with the new professional cameras is they bracket the exposure. So they'll take pictures of different ISOs at one point and see which is the best, and then use that for that particular event. Because the light will say, of course, the lighting doesn't change, of course. So now that leads me to a question. The statement that I told you on the beginning about photography being light drawing, is it true? So far into the topic, is this particular statement from me correct or wrong? So what you have learned today, basically, let's just wrap this up for you guys. Photography is basically photo capturing. I mean, that is light capturing or light drawing, which helps in creating photo in different ways in which the light is captured in, or it's drawn in. And what is exposure triangle? Exposure triangle is basically the important thing when taking a photo, which is shutter speed, ISO, and exposure. Aperture, sorry. Aperture, the wider the aperture, the more light. So basically, volume of light on the aperture side. And the ISO is basically noise or the boost of light that you get. And the shutter speed is basically the time in which the photo is taken. So we'll be learning about that in the next chapters. So don't worry about it now. So basically, you also know that different things affected in a different way. So you can take more ISO, it might reduce the aperture, and you can increase the aperture, which reduces the ISO, and you can increase the shutter speed, and it might reduce both of them. So that's how the ISO works. I mean, the exposure triangle works. Next up, we have the aperture. Basically, it's the stops of the aperture, that is 1.6, 2.8, and everything is called as an f-stop. It's a function of the lens itself and not the camera. And its working is similar to the human eye. As you can see, these are different things that we have aperture, and higher the aperture, the shallower the photo. I mean, sorry, the deeper the photo. As you can see, this is the highest. F16 is basically the highest aperture in this. It's gonna get the deepest photo, and the lowest will give more shallow depth of field. And then we have about ISO. It's equivalent to film speed. and how sensitive the camera sensor is to the light itself. And I also taught you why different ISOs are better for different conditions, as well as why not all ISOs will be the same, and what happens when you have more ISO in your photo than you need. That's about it from today's class. If you have any doubts, just let me know. If anyone has any doubts. Okay. Okay, thank you so much for your time. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you.
அப்போ எனக்கு அப்போ இல்லை தெரியாது அப்போ தெரியாது நீங்கள் விலையை கேளுங்கோ என்ன விலைன்னு தெரியும் தானே எனக்கு 1 கிலோ மாவும் எண்ணெயும் வேணும் 1.5 லிட்டர் பண்ணாலும் சரி 1 லிட்டர் பண்ணாலும் சரி விலை கேட்டா தெரியும் தானே 1 லிட்டர் மாவையும் வேண்டி